Hey, Wendell, check it out. Surround sound. So Satya Nadella is now the CEO of Microsoft, and we can talk about that maybe for just a second here. But if you guys really want to see an in-depth video on that, what you need to do right now is click on the screen. Click on the freaking screen. You can pretty much click anywhere because I'm going to make the whole entire screen clickable. Just click somewhere on this screen and it'll take you to our video where we talk about what the implications of him coming into the CEO position are for Microsoft, but more importantly, what they are for the rest of the world, his philosophies, his vision, and also Bill Gates is back, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well in that video. But right now, Wendell, what do you think let's get your forecast for the future with Satya Nadella as the new CEO of Microsoft.
I think Microsoft's not doing bad in the business department. I think they'll continue to do okay in the business department. I think that they may actually have some gains on the gaming side and stuff like that. But in terms of like being like Apple and having the unified platform, I don't see it happening unless they have some outside talent or somebody with an outside perspective come in and bring them to the executive team to sort of give them a more, what do consumers want? Because Microsoft is so business oriented.
So go ahead and watch our other video on that. We're going to get into the regularly scheduled tech now. All right. So Twitter, they lose money. I mean, why does Twitter always lose so much freaking money? Do they ever make any money? They lost $645 million. Their stock, just a few months ago, they had their IPO, and the stock prices were like, hey, it's crazy. But they don't make money. I mean, they've got a lot of users. Their growth is down, but I don't know. Why don't they make any money, man?
I'm actually kind of disturbed about the number of people that are using Twitter as like a message distribution service. So like small towns and municipal government and things like that are saying, hey, subscribe to our Twitter feed or whatever. And they use Twitter to make announcements and get the word out and things like that. It's sort of a micro messaging, micro subscription framework.
Yeah, it's like, hey, don't go to school on Thursday because there's a wild bear loose. And if you don't have Twitter, you don't know about this, but the city is using Twitter. That's just the way it is.
That could probably be monetized. I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know how much people will be willing to pay for that. But if it's, microtransactions or they figure that out, then yeah, maybe. But I was blown away. Apparently the loss was like $645 million is what the loss was, something in that neighborhood. That is an awful lot of money to lose on a 140 character messaging platform.
Wow. And it's a lot of people wish that they were, that their website was Twitter. No, you don't. All right. Moving right along here. This is kind of interesting if you guys are interested in, different cultures around the world and how they work on the internet. Of course, there's tons of censorship in China, but they also say that they have a problem with internet addiction. Kids playing StarCraft until 3 in the morning, God forbid. And in 2008, the Chinese government said that internet addiction was a clinical disorder and it was the most threatening thing to their youth. So they're putting them in like these rehabilitation centers, and it's kind of an interesting little 6 or 7 minute documentary from the New York Times. And if you are interested in that sort of thing, I would highly recommend that you go over and take a look at that. Next up, in Osaka, they are giving out just free Wi-Fi. It's kind of crazy. So we're just going to mention it and move on right now. If you're in Osaka, just turn your Wi-Fi on and connect, and then put in your email address. So they are going to harvest your email address, but
that's Japan.
Yeah, that's over in Japan. It's not in China anymore. Totally different world we have here. All right, and I want to talk about this for just a second. There's a creepy new Google Glass app that can identify different individuals based upon their face. It's like facial recognition technology. And Google says in their terms of services, to the developers that they are not supposed to use facial recognition technology, even though the device is totally capable of recognizing a face. And so what this developer is doing right now, even though it's against policies, they've created this app named Name Tag. And they're not going to put it on the store. So it'll have limited availability, and it'll probably be in the hands of just a few people that really know what they're doing. And it may even sideload. So that's just how it's going to work. But the alarming thing is that it will be able to recognize people based upon their facial features, and then it will bring up all of the information. And there are millions of people in this database. And it can search for like your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all your stuff. It can tell you if someone is single or dating someone. It can tell you their interests based upon just their profiles on tons of different websites. So this disturb you at all, Wendell?
Well, it's sort of the genie's already out of the bag. I think that it's really not to be an apologist for Google, but this is not a Google problem. It turns out that if you're an employer in America and you do a background check on employees, pretty much all of the 1995 background check companies that are out there for prospective employees, you give them a name and a social security number, and that company's already going to give you a lot of information from all their social network profiles and their Twitter, their recent Facebook posts, stuff they've uploaded to Flickr and Instagram, and it's all part of the background check. I mean, there are dozens of websites you can go on and order a background check for anybody. And a lot of the times in your employment application, when you apply to somebody for a job, you consent to allow them to do that kind of a search on you. And so there are already companies that are making a lot of money doing those kind of background checks, in addition to the criminal and court case background checks. So the genie's already out of the bottle.
Well, the stupid cord. It's like wrapping around my head. Well, you mentioned that, but the thing is that with this app, nobody is consenting at all. Typically, you walk up to someone and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I do such and such." With this app, you'll have all that information immediately, and it can be kind of invasive, and you'll have an upper leg on somebody unless everybody has that app. Are we moving? Are we moving to a world where this sort of thing is completely ubiquitous and nobody can get away from it, and everywhere you go, all of your personal information is everywhere. Everyone knows everything about you. When you go into a store, the store knows what you purchased last time. Everyone in the store knows your name. They get a heads-up display thing that says, like, all these people are in the store. And every time you look at someone else, it knows your shopping history. It knows all that sort of thing. Is that the world we're moving toward? And are we just going to have to get used to it?
Well, I would like it if we weren't moving toward that, but I think, like I say, I think the genie's already out of the bottle, because the companies that do the background checks don't really check. And there are other websites that are free, like tineye.com, that you can upload somebody's picture and it'll tell you everywhere on the internet it's seen a picture like that. It's not really face recognition exactly, but a lot of the time people use the same headshots or the same picture for their profile and that kind of thing. And you can really find out where somebody's been online by uploading a couple of their photos from Facebook or whatever public source you can find on that website. And that's been there for years. And there's not just that website. There are dozens of websites that do that type of thing. So in an app, it does make it easier. It does make it a little more accessible, but it's more insidious that it's there. And I would rather people be aware that it's there than not realize it's there. There are companies right now that are buying the DMV database, and there are states that are selling the DMV database. And I think that's really insidious, but that's the kind of thing that's going into building a lot of these databases.
Guys, get used to it. That's the way things are going to be. You can move out to the woods like I did. It's actually a lot cheaper than living in a city, so consider that. And the other thing that you can do is just change all your profile pictures on all the different things to dinosaurs or prehistoric creatures that don't live anywhere on the earth anymore. I don't know. I think it'd be fun. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the cell phone wars. We talked about it last week. And last week, it was Google and Samsung hanging out and being relaxed and groovy and sharing patents and that sort of thing. Well, Apple and Google are not going to share patents. They still hate each other. They still really freaking hate each other. But there's something that they hate even more than they hate each other, and that's patent trolls. Because it's like, they're in a ring. This is the picture I want you to have in your head. Google, Apple, they've been in a ring for a long time. They got their gloves on and they're boxing. And there's some, like little yipper type dog running around the ring, biting them both in the ankles the entire time they're trying to fight. So I think it's gotten to the point where they're like, damn it, let's kill that stupid yipper dog. So that's exactly what's happening right now. Apple and Google have joined forces, and they are lobbying to change a few things as far as all the different patent cases go. And all they really want is for the government to say, listen, if someone comes in there, especially one of these patent troll companies, but just anybody who files a patent lawsuit, if they win that lawsuit, they're going to be responsible for their legal fees as well as the other legal fees on the other side. Because right now, these patent trolls, they take Google and Apple to court, and sometimes Google and Apple and a lot of other companies, especially small companies, have to spend millions defending themselves from these frivolous, nonsensical lawsuits. And then when everything's said and done, even if they win, they're still out the legal fees. So that's really what they're doing here. They're really not friends anymore. And some people online are saying they're friends. They ain't friends still, but they have a common enemy now. I don't know. Wendell, you have any input on this one, or?
Yeah, I think that it really is just the focus is really on NPEs, non-practicing entities, and that's sort of code for this is a company that owns a bunch of patents but doesn't actually do anything with them. And a lot of companies create intellectual property company or intellectual property holding companies, and they put all their patents and their IP and things like that to help shield the intellectual property from lawsuits and settlements and things like that. But even that wouldn't be classified as a non-practicing entity. A non-practicing entity is really just a company that exists for litigation and settlement and that sort of thing. I don't really see this as a bad thing. This is sort of the industry trying to deal with its own problem itself. And this is one reason that patent trolls a lot of the time are not targeting larger organizations anymore. They're targeting Main Street and small businesses.
This started in Vermont. Like they already started doing this exact same thing, and I believe it's happening in Wisconsin as well. But you guys can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But there are some places in the country that are looking after the small businesses and trying to do anything they can to stop these frivolous patent troll nonsense lawsuits.
Yeah, the Attorney General of Vermont went after one of the patent trolls that was suing small businesses, only small businesses, for copiers that could send email.
Yeah, that was actually hilarious. It was the first state that actually sued a patent troll. They were like, "Oh, you're going to sue all of our, small businesses around here? Okay, well, we're going to sue you." I don't think they were ready for that. And that was actually a ridiculous lawsuit. Is that still going on, or was there ever a resolution in that?
No, they've gone away for the time being.
But they still
exist.
Yeah, they still exist and still maintain their.
I'm not aware of any ongoing litigation.
All right, so Samsung. Let's talk about cell phones. Let's go ahead and talk about Samsung. They're sponsoring the Olympics in Stokey, and I'm not even going to get into all the ridiculous nonsense that's going on around these Olympics. I don't know. Do you think they're going to happen? Like, do you think it's even going to happen, the Olympics?
Yeah.
Have you seen some of the bathrooms? That's like the funniest thing online. Like the pictures of bathrooms. There's one bathroom that it's like 2 toilet seats beside each other with no divider. That one's funny, but the funniest one, and you guys can link it in the comments or whatever, is there's the toilet sitting there, and there's like 3 just regular like office chairs sitting right in front of the toilet, like looking at it.
Well, that's where you can wait so that it's your turn.
just sit there and just like, anytime now, buddy.
There's not a meme on the internet that you can, socially awkward penguin is not awkward enough for that situation.
Oh God. Anyway, so Samsung, they really, really want this to be a totally Samsung Winter Olympics, and they don't want any Apple logos anywhere. And reportedly, they're running around telling all of the athletes to cover up their the Apple logos on their phones, and they're even offering to give them new phones. They're like, "Hey, look, we've got this Galaxy Note 3 thing or whatever." The Galaxy Note 3. That's the one they're really pushing. But it's kind of ridiculous that they're trying to censor the Apple logos, during the open. They don't want to see any athletes during opening ceremonies or sitting over there on the sidelines with an Apple logo on their thing. That's almost psychopathic.
I don't even like. It's been there's so many other things like this. I don't even. It makes it impossible to watch television because the first time that I realized that the ads at like baseball games were being digitally replaced in real time, it was just like I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
All right, let's talk about Steve Wozniak. He usually makes me a little bit happier. He said some things that I think Apple right now is probably freaking out about, but in a recent interview, he said that Apple should make an Android phone. And, he really loves Android. And he said that he loves Android, and I'm sure, Apple keeps reminding everybody that, listen, he is not actively involved at Apple, even though he's, still an employee of Apple. He's not actively involved at Apple. But Wozniak says they should make, a device, and then they could have 2 different flavors. You could have the iPhone with Android or the iPhone with iOS. What do you think is going on right now at Apple?
Well, they're probably freaking out slightly, but it's like, no, they will never do this. But it's interesting because, Wozniak here is doing the quintessential, 1984. There's a Macintosh commercial, if you guys aren't familiar, from 1984 that is, there's a scene in the commercial that's like from the book 1984, which is, all these people are just, they're drones, and then somebody comes running in with a hammer, and she's different than the rest of the people that are all exactly identical, and she throws the hammer through the screen, and it's like,
I would bet that almost everyone's seen that. I think that was directed by Ridley Scott, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, it was a really awesome commercial. You should look it up on YouTube. And the whole thing there is, the whole thing with Apple in that era, and later, was think different. And iOS on the mobile devices is one of the most locked down, not customizable at all things that ever there was. And Android is a lot more open, a lot more customizable, even before you root. Just something as simple as the dark theme on iOS 7. iOS 7's everything is white, but you can invert the contrast for better readability. A lot of people are doing that, and it makes like the blues orange and things like that. And they're like, look, I customized my phone, it's black, and the new iOS 7 interface to me looks a lot better black than it does white. But in order to do that, you have to turn on the basically the I'm blind feature. You can't just customize your colors.
Yeah.
And something as simple as customizing your colors, I mean, think different, but you can't customize your colors or customize much about the operating system at all.
No, their new mantra is we have already been thinking differently, so you don't have to. That's exactly what's going on over there.
It really is that really is the case. But or can you imagine running iOS with customizations on like a 6 or 7 inch screen? That would be pretty cool. Well, not 7 inch, but like not 6 or on like a larger phone, because I think the iPhone 5 is just too small.
Wendell, have you seen the time?
Oh no, is it rant 30 already?
It's rant 30. Wendell, we called it. Article right here. The UK government is going to unblock the internet, and the reason they're going to unblock the internet is not because they've seen the light of day and realized that the internet should be open and free. No, they're going to unblock the internet because they created this whole, filter to save the children, to stop all the pornography and anything they disagree with, and esoteric content and that sort of thing. They've realized that it's not working. We're blocking so many good sites. Whoops! Oh no, we put some small businesses out of business because we accidentally blocked them because something happened with the. So it's not working, guys. In a British accent. So as you can see here, it's clearly not working. The children are no safer than they were before, and now we are going to try to find a new way to fix it. So what do you think is coming next, Wendell?
Well, what they're going to do is take this horrible layer of bureaucracy that they've added to have to deal with this, and they're going to add more layers of bureaucracy to try to solve the problems the first layer of bureaucracy created.
Oh, well, that's just what we wanted. Thank you.
So what they're going to have now is so we got the blacklist. They're basically going to do a whitelist, but then there's going to be an appeals committee and, sessions and a joint chief of chancellor something or other that has something to do with overseeing the appeals. And so you can get on the whitelist if you submit an appeal in triplicate, but the form is at the bottom of a filing cabinet, bottom of a locked filing cabinet in a disused lavatory at just past the out of order sign.
Yeah, it's going to be the ministry of we don't have any idea how this works anymore, but we're trying as hard as we can to make sure that only a few websites get on the internet because someone gave us a lot of money to do so.
So for you folks that are being oppressed by Cameron, I strongly suggest you grab your torches and pitchforks and write a coherent but angrily worded letter and send that in, because honestly, I don't know what else to tell you to do. I mean, this doesn't work. He doesn't understand, and they're only going to make it worse by adding more crap. So, I mean, come on. Really? Come on.
I feel like in China they do a lot of the censorship to, control what the population gets and sees, and it's more of a propaganda machine and that sort of thing. And I fear that the censorship that's going to be happening in London is going to pave the way for some of the nonsense that's similar to what's happening in the US, Canada, and Australia and that sort of thing, where the major companies kind of retake control of the internet. And then we're going to, I guess, segue into the next article here. And they're going to do stuff like what Verizon's been doing. So Wendell, go ahead and take it away right now. We're going to talk about Verizon, because they're completely denying that they're throttling any traffic. They're not discriminating, man. Hey, we just won this thing that says we can discriminate, but we're not discriminating, so they say. Wendell, I beg to differ.
So it's more complicated than that, and we're going to take a different stance on it than you're probably familiar with. There was a blog post from a guy who has a business account with Verizon and a personal account, and they're physically very close to one another, so they travel over a lot of the same Verizon FiOS, that's the fiber optic service from Verizon, infrastructure. And it's just a blog post. And he went on technical support, and the guy from technical support, it's like technical support chat, probably clueless, but he was asking, do you guys do throttling? And the technical support guy didn't really understand what he was talking about at first. Then the technical support guy was like, yeah, we probably do throttling. It's not really a confirmation that guy really, honestly, that was doing support probably doesn't know. But let's say for a second that they are doing throttling, and they don't admit it because they've come out later after this came out and said, no, we treat all traffic equally. But if they were throttling traffic, I mean, how would we really know? We would have to subpoena router configurations. It would take in-depth testing and some other stuff. In this particular blog article, the guy went to speed test, like a speed test site, and he was getting like 75 megabit. But he could not download from Amazon AWS, which is where Netflix uses. Netflix uses that for a lot of their infrastructure for streaming movies and things like that. They use the Amazon infrastructure to help them deliver that. And so he couldn't get a really good connection to Amazon on his home connection. It was very slow, but it's very fast on his business connection. And so he did a trace route, which shows you the path that your traffic is taking through the internet. And these paths through the internet were remarkably similar on the Verizon side. And so that's reasonable evidence that maybe something's going on the Verizon network that maybe should not be going on.
And just to clarify here, this is not like something that's within a margin of error. This is at his house, 40 kilobits per second. At his office, on the same exact type of connection, 5,000 kilobytes per second.
The only difference is that one's a residential account and the other one's a business account. Now, is it that the residential segment of the network, does Verizon have a segment of their network for residential and commercial, and was the residential side of the network congested and the business side not? That could entirely be the case. But unless you subpoena the router configuration from all these companies and figure it out, it's going to be really difficult to prove in court. So even if net neutrality is enforced by law, situations like this, I think it's going to be really tough to enforce it. I think the companies are so large, and they've got their audience so sort of wrapped up. You've got a captive audience of consumers that there's already so little competition with ISPs that they can pretty much do what they want, and it's really an uphill battle to demonstrate anything else because they've got a strong disincentive to provide good Netflix service to these people because they also sell video services, and that's the fundamental problem.
So all the incentive is where all the money is, and all the money is with network shaping. That's exactly where all the money is. Speaking of that, AT&T has filed a patent to this exact extent. Now, this new patent from AT&T is scary and horrifying, and here's what it does. It is a patent for a method of looking at your traffic and determining if the traffic, number one, is permissible or not, and after it's permissible, it will determine what price package that traffic should go on. So, for instance, let's give you guys a rough for instance here. Some traffic is going through and it's just regular web traffic. That'll have one price point. But then you start watching Netflix or YouTube, and that's going to be, you're now using premium traffic, and that'll have a different price point. These are just some ideas of how this could work. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than just that. But the patent that they filed here, to me, shows that they do have some sort of an intent to discriminate with the different types of data that are flowing through this. And Wendell, it feels to me like, back in the day, remember we had AOL and you had CompuServe, and I think a lot of these companies look back and they were like, that's how it should be. AOL costs $10-20 a month, right? And we didn't have any of this internet garbage, and you had to pay extra to get to that. Well, we should have our own nice little closed off section of the internet, maybe a whitelist. Hello there, everybody in the UK. Or something like that. And then if you want the rest of it, it's going to cost, extra, or it's going to be a separate charge, or we're going to charge you per gigabyte or whatever. I don't know. Do you think that's maybe where they could be going with this kind of stuff?
I think that's exactly where they're going, because if you have it ISPs sell more bandwidth than they have available, and that's part of their profit model. I mean, you sell 50 people, 100 megabit connection, it's not going to be 5 gigabit of internet traffic that you have to have. Most of the time, you probably aren't even going to use 1 gigabit. It's probably going to be just a couple hundred megabit, maybe not even that. And so as everything goes on the internet, people have had internet connections for a long time, but they're finding more and more stuff to do with them. And so it's eating into the profit margins. I mean, we know Time Warner's profit margin is like 90% on their ISPs and on their infrastructure. But they also sell movies and media and things like that. And it costs them nothing. Once the infrastructure is in place, it costs them nothing to deliver that to your home. And so this is AT&T sort of figuring out a way to charge you twice. So you've got your internet connection that you're paying for, and then they're like, oh, this kind of data, that's going to cost extra, or this kind of data, that's going to cost something else. And I don't really think, I think data is data. And, can you encrypt all of your data? Yeah, sure, you can encrypt your data, that's fine. But they're probably going to charge the most for encrypted data that they can't examine. We know AT&T already sells an internet connection that has like a $20 a month discount if you allow them to spy on your traffic. This is really bad. This is really bad for innovation. This is really bad for the scientific and sort of cultural literacy of the country in general. This is, new and creative ways to charge people for stuff. This is like charging for text messages brought to the internet. I mean, text messages is like a classic example. These companies make an insane amount of money, cellular companies but the text message protocol is a part of the cell phone signaling protocol. Your phone is constantly sending text messages to the tower as control messages at all times. And so it literally costs nothing, absolutely zero, because your phone is sending text messages all the time. It's the extra space in the messages from your phone to the tower about what is going on and signal levels and which channel it's using, that kind of thing, that your individual message goes in. So your phone is sending that data all the time regardless. And so text messages literally cost the carrier nothing, but they charge for them, and they charge an insane amount of money because it's convenient. Data is data. It's like water. It should be provided. They shouldn't have any say on what you do with the data once it leaves the device. You use it for streaming media, use it for email, whatever. If they're going to charge strictly based on usage. If you want to, you can opt to pay, for a higher bandwidth. But I think quality of service should be up to you. I think that you should be able to, on your phone, say, well, I've got a 5 megabit connection that I'm paying for. I'm going to prioritize VoIP. You should be able to make that choice. You should not have to pay extra to have a quality of service or to prioritize certain services on your connection. Any router of the last 5 years can do that. That is not a problem to do quality of service on any modern piece of equipment. But a lot of ISPs like Time Warner and Comcast really, really kneecap the quality of service that's in your modem. So if you start to use all of your upload, your latency goes to hell. If you configure your router with quality of service to conserve some of your upload, your router won't do that. If you get the commercial services from them, they turn the quality of service stuff back on, so you've got a better quality connection. But this is really wrong behavior. And the way that you correct this kind of behavior in the marketplace is to move to a competing company. But there are no competing companies. And so ISPs will always have bad behavior. And I think that's really unfortunate for Americans.
Wendell, I think there actually are some alternatives that are popping up here and there in different pockets in the country. And also different places in Canada, like we talked about that tiny town that only has a few hundred residents. But local companies got together and started running fiber to the homes. In Vermont, they have the horse that's running fiber to the homes from, I think, VTEL. And VTEL is gigabit for $39 a month. Then you got Google Fiber going into different places. And then we've got Provo, Utah, and that sort of thing. And the powers that be, like CenturyLink and Comcast and Time Warner, they can't stand this. Because a lot of these small companies that are coming out are very community focused, and they're trying to strike a balance between profit and what's good for the community. And that is how you do things. It's really good for local business. It's going to get you more customers, but it's really rubbing them the wrong way. So what they're doing is they're turning to lawmakers, like we talked about last week in Kansas, and they said, hey man, these guys are trying to run fiber and they're going to take our customers because they're not evil. And in Kansas, they're like, oh, well, you better stop them. First thing you need to do is write me a $100,000 check. And then after that, I'll write up a bill that's called like please don't run fiber to the homes unless you're Comcast. And they're like, oh, that's great, do it. Well, the same thing is now happening in Utah. Damn it. Yeah. So here we are in Utah, and here's the name of the bill that the Utah House is putting together. It's called the Interlocal Entity Service Prohibition. That's just a prohibition? And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to stop a company called Utopia. Or it's more of Utopia is more of a group. It's the Utah Telecommunications Open Infrastructure Agency. And Utopia is in 16 cities right now. They run fiber to the home. They, they do a lot of different things out there, but they're a smaller entity than like CenturyLink or Comcast, and they're way faster, and they're running things directly to the homes. Here's what the current bill is going to do. It's going to stop them from expanding, and it's going to keep them in the markets that they're in. So if they've got a building right here and somebody builds a building across the street that's not in their area, they're not going to be allowed to run fiber across the street because only CenturyLink and Comcast will be allowed to do so. And they want to make sure that they cannot compete with CenturyLink and Comcast. So they're turning to legislation as a business tool. And that's so beyond shady. So if you guys are in any of the districts that these guys are in, be sure to go and cast your votes for, whoever else. I don't know.
This is maybe slightly more complicated than that, because the cable companies are awarded franchises where a local municipal government or other sort of government structure works with the cable company for that franchise. And so the argument is like at a 10,000 foot view, it's like if you have two companies working in a given area, each with their own infrastructure, probably sharing the same telephone poles, but you have two companies maintaining two sets of infrastructure to serve the same customer base. Everyone is not going to subscribe to both companies, and most of the cost, theoretically, is tied up in your infrastructure setup. And so even if it's, it's two competing companies, but you could get in a situation where both companies do not make enough money to operate and maintain their infrastructure. If people are subscribing, it's like a 50-50 split from one company to the other company. And so that's sort of why a lot of places award the cable franchise so that one company is sort of favored over all other companies. But with Utopia, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison. I mean, the cable company offers some of the same services, but I don't think that there's exactly a perfect parity between the types of services the two offer. Now, I think that it's right what Utopia is doing. I think it's good, and Utopia is making money in areas that are franchised. But there's a danger that cable companies would look at it and say, "All right, we're going to pull out of the area," just to be spiteful because they've done it in the past. And that's really the crux of what a lot of these things are about. A lot of these arguments are about. But as a society, it seems crazy to argue about a company that's willing to deploy fiber optics. Why would you? Well, I mean, once the fiber optics are deployed, they can be reused. It's not like they're going to go away. Some other company could come in and maintain them. And that's happened in a lot of places. Some companies come in and spend a whole bunch of money, deployed fiber. Then that company has created spectacularly, and some other company has bought the fiber for pennies on the dollar. That happened in Provo. Some company put in a whole bunch of fiber optic stuff in Provo. They created, Google came in, bought the stuff. Now it works.
I think the municipality was involved, and that's like kind of a no-no, and so Google was able to come in and buy it for dirt cheap. But something really has to be done about net neutrality. That's like one of the biggest issues right now, and something really needs to be done to save the internet, because the direction it's going in is not the right one, and that's almost on a global scale.
Well, if you have these franchise agreements and it really is one provider, then you can't also at the same time have judges saying things like, "Oh, well, you could switch to a different provider." It's like, well, make up your mind. Either let multiple internet service providers exist in a franchised area, or don't use that as an argument that people can vote with their wallets and use a different company. Yeah, it's one or the other. You can't have it both ways.
That's exactly what they do. And you see all these political pundits on television saying like, well, they can, just vote with their dollars. No, they can't if you litigate to make it impossible so that they can only have one company. Like, well, this is the only company you can have, but you can vote with your dollars. So my answer is yes or no for internet. That's it. Yeah. In the I guess it's in the House, right? No. Is it Democrats? Is it in the House? I don't know where it is. Anyway, there's a bunch of Democrats, and it's in the House, and they are trying to bring back net neutrality. They realized, hey, it's not working out. for the FCC. So let's do something in the meantime. And we've got a pretty good group here together, including Ron Wyden and Al Franken and just a whole bunch of cool guys here on this. And they're trying to bring back net neutrality. And they're going to do this until the FCC can get its act together and figure out a new way to categorize network traffic so that it falls under, or so that it can, once again, enforce net neutrality. So I don't know, is this a step in the right direction? You think this is even going to go through? It's going to hit some really fierce competition once it hits the House.
It's probably a step in the right direction, but I think ultimately it's too late. And if here's a fun experiment you can do at home. Sign up with a provider like Linode.com or something like that, which is a VPS provider, virtual private server, or a VPN connection. If you're having problems with YouTube buffering and doing weird stuff, sign up with VPS and tunnel your YouTube traffic through your VPN. I've experienced this with Time Warner, where YouTube absolutely would not play an HD video. No idea why, like prime time on a Saturday night. Is it congestion in my area? Well, everything else seems fast. All right. Fire up a VPS at Linode, tunnel all my traffic through Linode. All of a sudden, YouTube is blazing fast. I'm streaming HD videos at like 4 or 5 times real time. I mean, I'm playing and the bar across the bottom is zooming. I've personally experienced that. Does that point to wrongdoing on Time Warner's part? Not necessarily. I mean, it could be something weird with the network. It could be something weird between here and there that Linode's not experiencing the same congestion. But does it pass the sniff test? Maybe not. I mean, infrastructurally, Time Warner ought to be on top of things like that. They ought to be dealing with it. It should be a pretty consistent experience no matter what network you're trying to get to, as long as they have the bandwidth available for it. Amazon, Netflix, big companies like that, they've got the bandwidth for it. So what's the issue? What's the fix? I don't know that even if we had net neutrality, that the games that are already being played with this kind of thing could be resolved.
Well, Tim Berners-Lee has an idea. And, if you don't know who Tim Berners-Lee is the dude who invented the internet. And he says that we need to re-decentralize the web. Initially, it was sort of a decentralized thing. Nobody really claimed ownership of it. It was just the internet, right? So he says that we need to decentralize the web, which would make it sort of a mesh net. And we've talked about that briefly before. But, I mean, it's kind of interesting that the creator of the internet is seeing that as like the most viable solution around all this nonsense.
Well, it's really about decentralization and new protocols that do decentralization. And he's right. There are actually, I mean, if you really want to take it to the next level, there are new standards that need to be implemented. We need encryption everywhere, but at the same time, we also need the ability to cache traffic in a sort of a decentralized way, or at least flag it as being able to be cached. So Netflix, for example, you could, not with Netflix, but ISPs, big ISPs, could stand up caching servers that would obey content creators' caching wishes. So Netflix could say, well, when you have a movie, you can cache this file for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And that cache could live on a generic ISP server that not just Netflix uses, but any service could use in it. And that works well with unencrypted traffic. There's a great open source proxy called Squid. And for unencrypted internet traffic, it can sort of be received and cached and dealt with because it's unencrypted. But for encrypted traffic, you can't do that. You can't mess with the traffic that's encrypted. And so it'd be nice if somebody wrote a standard that can deal with encrypted files or encrypted traffic, but certain things could be cached. And so you could have an encrypted Netflix movie, but you can't play it back without the key, and the Netflix service has to issue the key, but the one encrypted file could be cached for everybody. I mean, that would be a handy thing for ISPs. And that's not exactly decentralization, but it sort of makes a lot of the problems of distribution and things like that on the internet go away.
DARPA is paying IBM to develop self-destructing chips, so all the sci-fi movies can now, have a lot of fun with those. It basically just allows them to just turn to dust. Something inside happens, and there goes your chip, and it ruins the CMOS. And
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
There are Air Force devices that basically have plastic explosives underneath the hard drive. So if something goes down, they hit a button and the whole thing explodes.
Yeah, I mean, the reason they did this mainly was because, remember back when they did the Osama bin Laden mission or whatever, a crashed helicopter was recovered by the enemies, and Yeah, they were all embarrassed. They're like, "Oh God, they've got our technology. If DARPA would have paid IBM some millions to make a destructible CPU, then we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place." So, Randy, get on this. Dell, remember those ARM servers or those that we were talking about? You know, the Opterons from AMD.
Oh,
Dell's
yeah.
going to be the first company to roll them out. There's a really interesting server tray. It's really nice and long, and I mean, it looks long, but it's not really that much longer than a standard server tray. When you think about it, it's just really narrow.
Yeah, it looks like it's made for a blade center or something.
Yeah, you put a whole bunch of those in a system together, and just have tons of hard drives. It could be kind of interesting. But yep, Dell will be the first one. They're going to be rolling out later in the year. I'll be interested to see exactly how those do. And we've got some very small NVIDIA graphics cards coming out that look like they could be quite fast. And what's more interesting is they're going to run right off the bus power, so you're not going to need to hook up any power whatsoever. But we have the GTX 750 and the GTX 750 Ti coming out very soon. And they're not that much less powerful on paper than the 760. I mean, they've got just a few fewer. Is that good grammar or bad grammar? They have a few fewer CUDA processors, and the CPU is clocked. I mean, the GPU is clocked pretty high. They look like they're going to be pretty decent cards. Of course, I'll have to play with them before I can say anything definitive about them. But damn, they're small. What else do we have to talk about here? Science stuff.
Yay, science.
The prosthetic hand. Did you see this?
Yeah, it's the first prosthetic hand that's really directly hooked up to his nerves.
Yeah, and he can actually feel. He can tell when something's soft. He can tell when something is, brittle. He can pick things up. He can shake hands with someone and get, it's a very rudimentary feeling at this point. But, you guys can watch the video, and at the end of the video, the guy's like, I need this. So it's going to be the first step to the next step. This is the first step to the next step.
Well, it's only a matter of time before we really have mass-produced sort of silicon, I guess, that you can plug directly into the nervous system. I'd say that people will start reusing nerves in other places, like maybe nerves to muscles, like shoulder muscles or something, and use those for other things, like another interface.
Speaking of nerves, you know what gets on my nerves? Batteries that die all the time. Well, how'd you like that segue? There's a bunch of guys at Virginia Tech that are working on a glucose-powered battery. Now, they've been working on this for a while, and I think how they discovered that this was a good idea was they gave children a bunch of sugar, and then they observed water. And they were like, wait a minute, these children run longer on glucose. Now, I know there's going to be a bunch of people in the comments who are like, that's actually incorrect. There's it's something else that causes the hyperactivity. Shut up. Nobody cares, guys. But, Wendell, how does this battery work?
Okay, so it runs on sugar, like table sugar or sugar from corn syrup, more likely. And there's not really a lot
that's where the money is.
Well, yeah, corn syrup. That's great. Another thing that runs on corn syrup. It's awesome. They put corn syrup in now. They're putting corn syrup in my laptop now. What the hell? No. Basically, the deal with this is that it's, I guess, maltodextrin glucose. So, but it's a whole bunch of different enzymes, and then it'll produce water as a byproduct and electricity. So this makes me curious about the recharge process, because I wouldn't think that with the enzyme situation that recharging would be all that easy, but maybe they figured that out. The energy density, though, looks really promising. It's like 10 times at the high end the energy capacity of a lithium battery or traditional battery. The other thing is, because it's sugar, I think that it's going to be a lot more stable. I mean, the problem with lithium, especially early on, was the energy density was just so high that entropy was working against you. I mean, the thing, when you put that much order into such a small space, it really wants to catch on fire. And organic molecules are really awesome about not having a runaway reaction. I mean, somewhat. I mean, give me a little leeway there. But so the situation with this is that you can pack a ton of energy in there, and you won't have sort of a runaway event, apparently, and catch on fire. Because all those things where somebody's phone caught on fire and it burns their pants or it burns a house down or whatever, that comes from putting too much energy in not enough space.
You know, you gave me a really terrible idea. The sugar lobby, or not the sugar lobby, but the corn lobby needs to get in bed with the military industrial lobby, and then we can start making, I don't know, bombs that run on on high fructose corn syrup.
Instead of iPhones that catch on fire, it's going to be iPhones that accidentally produce Agent Orange and poison a town.
Oh, God. Yeah, pictures and videos of things like, my phone just turned to napalm. Yeah, let's move right along then. So you can build this car in about an hour. It's an open source car, and it's pretty cool. I'm not really going to get into it too awful much. You guys can take a look at the video, but it's stuff like projects like this and 3D printers are going to usher in a new age of DIY type creativity stuff. I don't know, anything special you want to highlight about this?
Not really. I think that it's a really actually not a terrible looking. You know, it doesn't look like a go-kart. It looks like a real actual car. It's about $4,000 in parts, and you can put it together in about an hour.
Well, I mean, it's kind of. I mean, it's the chassis. I guess looks more like a car than a go-kart. But I mean, without a body on top of it, it does have a go-kart-esque look, or maybe a dune buggy look.
It does also need a roll cage really bad.
Well, it depends on how fast you're going to go, but yeah. and two fructose missile launchers on the side. And,
high fructose command.
Go! Fructose Commander! What are we getting into? I think I'm getting delirious. Let's talk about video games. Hyper Light Drifter is a very Zelda-esque kind of interesting pixel art game. I backed this on Kickstarter, but I wanted to, give you guys a heads up about it. If you're someone who likes Zelda or games like it, it looks really beautiful, and there's going to be a beta coming up in June. So go ahead and take a look at that game. Amazon purchased Double Helix Games, and they're the makers of the latest Killer Instinct game. And yeah, it looks like they're going to be making a console. Now, a lot of people, rumors have been floating around that they're going to make an Android console to, I guess, go head-to-head with Ouya. But here's the thing, Amazon, they have a lot of stuff, a lot of infrastructure in place already. They've got, like specialized apps that are probably going to work with the console. So it's probably going to be a really interesting multi-purpose appliance based on Android. And I think they have their mind in the right place. They know that they need some really good first-party titles, or some really, they need some titles that are going to sell their console. So I'm not sure if, Double Helix is going to probably port Killer Instinct over, but I'm not sure if that's going to be an exclusive just for the Amazon, platform. Maybe it'll probably be an exclusive just based upon the hardware. That's what I think. It'll be like, well, this will work on Android, but you're going to have something as beefy as our console, which is going to cost somewhere around $300 or less. So I don't know. What do you think about Amazon getting into the console market?
I really have to wonder what they're thinking. I could see this maybe as a distribution platform for like Amazon Prime as their best bet. Maybe casual gaming, but we really need somebody to rethink the living room, because like remote controls and all this other kind of stuff is just complete and utter BS. And maybe if Amazon does something like that, but really that's going to be a smart TV. That's not going to be a console.
Yep. All right. We do have a winner of the contest, and I lost the page I had open to announce that winner for the contest for the O2 amp and DeX. So what I'm going to do is probably something you guys are going to hate. I'm not going to announce the winner right here. I'm going to put it in the comments. It'll be the last comment on that post, and there'll probably be a few congratulations, but it'll be there. We have picked a winner, and I will contact that winner. So if I do not contact you directly, I'm sorry, but you did not win. Please try again. That's like the message you get when you open up a bottle of whatever and read underneath the thing, unless you won something, which you probably didn't. I don't know. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for this week. Guys, there's a bunch of links over on the side of the screen. We've redone that for you. Thank you very much for your tech support. You guys have been really awesome. I just hired an editor for PAX. It's a different editor than the one we hired, because he's the editor that we hired here in town is not going to be available. So I hired a different editor, and I'm flying him to town just for PAX, someone I've worked with before, and that's going to be really awesome. So, and it'll really help us crank out a lot of videos during PAX, and we have a lot of interesting things coming, and We were supposed to be working on the website, like version 2.0 this week, Wendell, but the snow kind of kept everyone out of the office, I guess.
Yeah, it turns out that everything snowed. Well, we did a few little things, but nothing really crazy.
Yeah, it's not 2.0 yet, but we have several pages of notes that we are going to be implementing into the website, and the people working on that are being paid directly with the tech support money, so thank you very much for that.
Yay!
Yes.
It's awesome. We're actually getting stuff done. Can you believe it? We're embarking on a journey.
There were some really impatient people that were like, "Hey man, it's been 1 month since I donated $3. What the hell?"
Yeah, it's like, I got news for you. I mean, we're banking your $3, but I mean, come on, really, come on.
Anyway, you guys are awesome. So we will see you next time. Natia Sadella. No, Natia. No, Salam. What's his name?
Satya Nadella.
Natia Sadella, I said.
No, yeah, I think you whipped your flurds. What did Arnold say when the sushi restaurant messed up his order?
I don't know.
It's not a tuna.
That shouldn't be funny.